All right, welcome to the show, everybody. We have a wild one for you. Really, really wild. So I'm going to give you an update on the death toll and the new developments that are happening in the war in Israel and Palestine. We also have, I'm going to lead with this, in fact, the most horrifically deranged reactions I've seen to the war. And these reactions are from all over the map. I mean, at least people online, political junkies online, have absolutely lost their damn minds. So we're going to dive into all that. We have the warning that Israel got that this or something like this was going to happen. It was a recent warning. It was from Egyptian intelligence officials, and nothing was done. So we'll dive into that. And then, of course, we have Ben Shapiro and Andrew Tate got into a fight on Twitter over this exact issue. And there will be more on top of that as well, but I think every story today is on this issue for understandable reasons. So anyway, guys, do me a big favor, click that subscribe button. It helps the channel out tremendously, and it doesn't cost you anything. I deeply appreciate that. And without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into it. The stuff that I've seen since this, the Hamas terror attack against Israel and now the subsequent war being waged in Gaza, the reactions have been absolutely astonishing. I mean, I'm talking about some of the dumbest things I've ever seen, some of the most genocidal things I've ever seen, and the extra disheartening part about it is it's coming from every which direction. Like, I have a new political rule that I think is an ironclad fact of reality now that never really occurred to me before, but I honestly think the more normie you are, like almost the more apolitical you are and kind of checked out you are, and just not like obsessed with politics, the more correct your take will probably be on many political issues, definitely ones involving war and peace, right? The people who are like hardcore political junkies and they're swimming in it 24/7, I mean, people have just lost their goddamn minds in reaction to what happened here. So what we're going to do is go through all of the just jaw-dropping, moronic responses from people. And this includes regular people, this includes political officials, this includes anybody and everybody under the sun from every which political stripe and direction. So let's start with this one. Now, we discussed this one the other day, but think about how extreme this statement is and how casual it was when it was said. So the Israeli defense minister, he ordered a siege of Gaza, over 2 million people in Gaza, let's be clear. Quote, "There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. We are fighting human animals, and we will act accordingly." Obviously, the counter argument people are going to make is like, well, this happened directly after Hamas ruthlessly mowed down civilians, so it's an emotional reaction. But, you know, the counter argument to that is the problem with what Hamas did is they massacred innocent civilians, and this reaction is going to massacre innocent civilians. When you say no electricity, no food, no fuel, and we're fighting human animals, well, like I said, the population of Gaza is about 2 million. About half of them are children. You have moms, grandmas, grandpas, little kids, babies. And so, like, you're doing a very similar thing. So to act like, well, this is the correct thing, it's amazing to me that people don't realize the gravity of what they're saying. So this was a poll done by, this is like some Eastern European news outlet, Visegrad, and they asked the following to their audience. Is Israel's decision to cut the water of the 2.3 million Palestinians living in Gaza the right response? 50% say yes. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I read this question, it looks to me like they were almost trying to load it in the direction of, hey, don't be a psycho and say yes. Because they point out there's 2.3 million Palestinians in Gaza. By the way, they are not all Hamas. In fact, I just saw a poll. It's about 50% of the population there wants to have a two-state solution on the 1967 borders. That's half the population. They are not Hamas. 62% wants a ceasefire. They are not all Hamas. Hamas won an election in like 2005, and they've held on to power in a dictatorial sense since then. The idea that Hamas just represents everybody there. So basically what you're saying is, I want to damn millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people. children, women, etc., civilians, to having no food, no fuel, no water, and no hope. So that is astonishing to me. So supporting like a medieval style siege against innocent people. Now, by the way, again, let's be clear. What Hamas did to civilians in Israel was horrific, and there absolutely should be consequences for the people who carried out the attack. That's what justice is. You go to the criminals, you go to the terrorists, you go to the ones who actually committed the crimes, and they're the ones who have to pay the consequences. But this is just collective punishment. In the same way that what Hamas did to all the Israelis was collective punishment, they treated women and children like they were the illegal settlers who just kicked people off their own land. Like everybody there is responsible for the vicious occupation that's been going on for decades and decades now. All right, I got more for you guys. Like I said, these takes are all over the map in terms of ideology and political persuasion. This one was big online. I don't know, I think they maybe since deleted it. But this person here says, it's really telling when you can only support Palestinians when they seem helpless and defenseless, but can't support them when they resist. How do you think decolonization works? Somebody else says, what did y'all think decolonization meant? Vibes, papers, essays, losers. So now you could tell here, the first one was from May 15th, so it was like the last time there was fighting that broke out in the region, right? This one is from October 7th. So in other words, when you have Hamas purposefully targeting innocent civilians, and your reaction is like, well, of course, this is resistance. Well, I hope you realize you just undermined the whole idea of resistance and decolonization. Because your argument is, well, of course this entails massacring and mowing down civilians. Well, then no normal person is going to look at that and say, I support that. Like, you are doing the Palestinians a deep, deep disservice by saying, like, well, of course we support hang gliding into a music festival and gunning down hundreds of innocent civilians. This stems from sectarian thinking and tribal thinking. And you see it all over the map in this instance. And the problem with that, when you think like that, like it's sports teams or something like that, all of your principles are out the window. So it becomes impossible for you to say, hey, I'm against war crimes as a matter of principle. That becomes like a foreign concept to you. Like, hey, massacring innocent people is wrong from a moral and ethical perspective, and it doesn't matter who does it, it's still wrong. If you can't bring yourself to say that anymore, you've lost your goddamn mind. All right, let's continue. Glenn Beck. I don't ever want to hear the words two-state solution ever again. If you believe in a two-state solution, you're a moron. Hamas does not want a solution. They want a final solution. So, in other words, all Palestinians are guilty for the actions of Hamas, and peace-loving Palestinians, freedom-loving Palestinians now have no right to self-determination and human rights and political rights because of the actions of Hamas. And he points out, well, look, these people are genocidal. But for you to say this and not even mention this fact, which we just pointed out, there's a medieval siege that's just been announced from the Israeli defense minister of Gaza. It's ongoing right now. No food, no fuel, no water. And they say we're fighting human animals. That is also final solution language. It's final solution language. And Glenn Beck thinks, no, collective punishment, guilty enough. Anybody who wants any semblance of a peace deal now, he says two-state solution, but I would imagine he would also say for any kind of solution, one-state solution, etc., you're a moron and you're wrong and we can never have that. Well, Glenn, I hate to tell you, man, how do you think we got to this place in the first place? How do you think we got here? Obviously, at the core of this is the endless occupation, the endless apartheid system. Palestinians in Gaza living in a permanent police state. In the West Bank, Palestinians being kicked off their land on a regular basis for some ultra-Orthodox Israeli settlers violating international law and just taking territory. That's obviously at the core of this. Now, that doesn't justify or rationalize Hamas murdering civilians, but let's not pretend like we don't know what led us to the place where we are right now. But from his perspective, no. If you support a two-state solution, my guess is he'd also say any kind of solution, you're a moron. All right, I got more for you. Let's continue. Here we have, these are crowds in Sydney, Australia. And it's a pro-Palestinian crowd. But as you're about to see here, perhaps they're more than just pro-Palestinian. Perhaps they're also flat out pro-Hamas and pro the terror attack that just unfolded in Israel. Listen to what they chant. Gas the Jews and fuck the Jews is what was being chanted. Jesus Christ, man. So again, it's this sloppy, generalized, sectarian thinking of, hey, they're all guilty. They're all guilty. Well, what about Jewish people who don't live in Israel? What about Jewish people who want to see either a two-state solution or a one-state solution with equal rights? What about Jews who are not on the illegally occupied territory? What about the ones who aren't involved in a settler colonial project and aren't the ultra-Orthodox extremists? What about them? Look, if they were chanting, fuck the illegal settlers, I think you'd have like over 70% agreement in any poll you took of the international community or almost in any country, right? Fuck the illegal settlers. Everybody would have been fine with that. I honestly think you probably could have even gotten away with like fuck the IDF, who are enforcing the apartheid system, who are enforcing the illegal occupation, who are defending the illegal Israeli settlers. Those things would have been fine. But gas the Jews and fuck the Jews? Of course, when you hear gas the Jews, you immediately go, oh, Nazis. And so now, this is like a pro-Palestinian protest that is honestly a pro-Hamas protest that is outright genocidal in their rhetoric. Obviously, that crosses every line imaginable, and nobody is going to support you. And by the way, they are undermining the Palestinian cause. Because any reasonable person wants human rights and political rights for Palestinians, but now you show somebody this video, and they'll think like, oh, are they all in favor of like gassing the Jews? Because they're not even waving the Hamas flag, they're waving the Palestinian flag. So there's this conflation of like, do Palestinians and pro-Palestinian people want to gas the Jews? And that feeds right into the Israeli far-right propaganda. So outright genocidal rhetoric. Again, by the way, wait for it. I'm going to show you more genocidal rhetoric in a second. But on the other side, there's genocidal rhetoric all over the place. People have lost their goddamn minds. But this right here, there is no defending this in any way, shape, or form. Absolutely, you should oppose the illegal occupation. You should oppose the apartheid system. You should oppose the living under a permanent police state. You should oppose the lack of human rights and political rights. Absolutely. But you should not, in any way, shape, or form, support fuck the Jews and gas the Jews. This should be the most obvious thing in the world, but apparently it's not. Matt Walsh, back to the other side here. Colonization has largely been a civilizing force in the world, a force for good. Most of the world would still be living in the Stone Age without it. Don't buy into the leftist decolonizing propaganda. So, backlash effect in the other direction. We got backlash effect all over the place here. But this is just, it's not even subtle. It's just an outright argument for colonization is good. I find this hilariously stupid because, of course, the reason why we're in this place in the first place is colonization. Is the illegal occupation, is the apartheid system, is the police state, is the no political rights, no human rights, people gunned down on a regular basis, just living their lives, Palestinian villages being razed to the ground with bulldozers, and illegal ultra-Orthodox settlers coming in and stealing the land all willy-nilly, being unapologetic about it in the process. That's what led to this bubbling resentment. That's what led to it, and that's what led to the backlash where civilians are killed in the other direction. Now, again, I want to be clear. There's no justification or rationalization ever for murdering civilians on either side. Full stop. Full stop. Let's also not pretend like we don't know what's at the core of this, and Matt Gaetz is playing professionally stupid here and acting like, well, actually, no, colonization is a good thing. That is psychotic. If we had at some point, let's say back in the 1990s, if we had decided, no, it's going to be a two-state solution along the 1967 borders. Palestinians get statehood. Israelis continue with their statehood. Two respective governments. And then we're going to have UN mediators in there. We're going to keep the peace. If we had decided back then this is what we're going to do, and there was already a Palestinian state, we very likely would not see what we just saw. We very likely would not have the rampant, wanton terror attacks. So, insane, just insane argument, man. All right, next. So now we go to, now you have a pro-Israeli protest, and let's see if the language they use is much different from the Sydney, Australia pro-Palestinian protest that said gas the Jews and fuck the Jews. Let's see what they're saying on the Israeli side. I believe this is in New York.
Fuck Palestine! Palestine to my dick!
What do you think the response should be from Netanyahu and the military to Gaza?
Kill all Palestinians! All of them! Not one left from the river to the sea. Palestine will be deceased!
And Israel need to do like this. You see? Now Gaza. Like this. Gaza need to do like this. Or like this, but all this Jewish. Two options.
What do you think the response should be to Gaza?
We gotta wipe them off the fucking map. I'm
That's
talking about every fucking flatten them like a parking lot.
Yeah,
Flatten them out once and for
There's
all. Just get rid of that.
nothing else you can do. They proved to us that there's nothing else you can do. We tried, and
We tried everything. It doesn't work. We have to wipe them flat off the fucking map, like a fucking parking lot.
I'm not stopping till all Arabs are wiped out.
I think now it's the time that we need to erase Gaza. There is people inside, our people inside, that kidnap, and now we need to kill all of them and free Israel. All of their belief is killing Jewish and killing and murder our people.
flatten it, flatten Gaza. That will be the last war in Gaza.
This will be.
Yes, it should be.
Incredibly disturbing, man. Look, this is what I've seen ever since the Hamas attack. What I've seen is there are plenty of people on the left who won't start the conversation with the very basic, 100% condemnation of massacring innocent civilians. Just flat out wrong, evil, immoral, unethical, not allowed. This doesn't represent Palestinians. This is terrible. We're against this. 100% condemnation. I didn't see many people leading the conversation with that, just saying that, right? And then on the other side, what I don't see is, so there was the Hamas terror attack, innocent civilians killed, and then immediately Israel kicks into gear and starts indiscriminately bombing apartment buildings, mosques, the only way out of Gaza into Egypt, etc. We're going to get to all this in a little bit when I give you the full updates. But as that's going on, the pro-Israeli side is not saying, hey, don't do collective punishment in the other direction and don't massacre civilians in the other direction. There's still this harping away on Israel has a right to defend itself. Israel has every right to respond here. We stand with Israel. And they just flat out overlook the fact that a medieval siege was just announced and is being implemented against Gaza. No food, no fuel, no water. Hospitals not able to function. Like I said, bombing apartment buildings, killing civilians. There's already over 260 children who are killed in Gaza. So it's like the outrage cuts in one direction for every idiot in this conversation. And there's no space for saying, hey, a terror attack that kills innocent civilians is 100% unacceptable. Full stop. And the people who committed that, they should be brought to justice. And also at the same time, don't do collective punishment in retaliation where you're also murdering civilians, because the core of the problem, we should all agree, is murdering civilians. So if it's bad on one side, it's bad on the other side. It's a basic ethical and moral principle. And you just don't see anybody doing it. All right, I got more for you. We're not done. An Israeli Defense Force official, Daniel Hagari, came out and said the following. The emphasis on this, retaliatory attack is on damage, not on accuracy. So in other words, yeah, we are going to level Gaza. We are going to indiscriminately bomb. We're not trying to be accurate. It should be the exact opposite of this. Of course, you should be focused on accuracy. You should be focused on getting the perpetrators, and that's it. No, it's on damage and not accuracy. This isn't subtle, guys. This isn't subtle. All right, Marco Rubio went on CNN, and look at what he says. So Jake Tapper says, is there a way for Israel to destroy Hamas without causing massive casualties against the innocent people of the Gaza Strip, and roughly 1 million of them are children? Great question from Jake Tapper. Marco Rubio responds, I don't think Israel can be expected to coexist or find some diplomatic off-ramp with these savages. These are people, as you've been reporting, that deliberately targeted teenage girls, women, and children, and the elderly, not just for rape and murder, and the dumping their bodies off in the streets of Gaza, where the crowds can then defile their lifeless bodies. They're just horrifying things. We don't know the full extent of it yet. There's more to come in the days and weeks ahead. You can't coexist with that. They have to be eradicated. Who is they? Who is they? Because it certainly sounds to me like the question was specifically about massive innocent civilian casualties, and roughly 1 million of them are children, and his response is, they have to be eradicated. You can't coexist with these savages. That certainly sounds to me like he's talking about Palestinians in general. So in other words, the same warped and twisted logic that Hamas uses when they go after innocent civilians. That's what this is. Oh my God, man. We're still not done. We're still not done. So Ed Markey, in the wake of the attack, was strongly booed by a Boston crowd for calling for de-escalation. 15 minutes later, this guy, Jack Ouch, responded directly, quote, de-escalation is not possible when they are taking hostages. Israel did not ask America to de-escalate on September 12, 2001. We stand with Israel. And then this response is great. Legitimately insane to think that September 12, 2001 is a foreign policy model to emulate. The whole point is somebody should have told us to de-escalate. We launched the war in Afghanistan and stayed there for over 20 years. We launched the war in Iraq in 2003 based on the attack, the 9/11 attacks, and we stayed there for over 20 years. Trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars wasted. $7 trillion for Iraq alone when all is said and done by the year 2053 when you include the interest. This was reported by Business Insider. We've talked about this ad nauseum. $2 trillion in Afghanistan. Hundreds of thousands, I believe the number is minimum 200,000 innocent civilians killed in Iraq alone. And then, of course, you have thousands of our own troops that died. And it just broke the region further, led to the rise of ISIS. The whole point is somebody should have said, you have to de-escalate. You have to be rational and reasonable and logical. You can't just go based off emotion and feelings of retribution and vengeance and revenge. And I get it in the moment. Of course, you're going to have those feelings. Of course, if innocent civilians were killed anywhere, you're going to, we got to go get them. But it's get who? It has to be specific. It can't be broad. It can't be collective punishment. It can't be sloppy, generalized, sectarian, tribalist thinking. So now, they're just flat out saying, this is our September 11th, and so we're going to respond like the U.S. did after September 11th. Well, that's viewed as one of the most historic blunders in all of modern history. This one is the chef's kiss, the perfect, to show you how much everybody's lost their goddamn mind. Watch this, guys. So you have one person saying, flatten everything, spare no school, no children's hospital, no old age home, delete their entire gene pool off the face of the earth. So this is a hardcore, far-right Israeli apologist, or Israel themselves. They have this picture here, which looks like they're probably some ultra-Orthodox person, maybe even an illegal settler themselves. Delete their entire gene pool off the face of the earth. So in other words, they're saying, I am pro-genocide. Let's do genocide. And then the response here is, from somebody with a Palestinian flag, now I understand why Hitler did it. So here you have, this is a genocide off. It's a genocide competition. Who can be more pro-genocide? You have this person saying, let's do genocide. Go after the schools, go after the children's hospitals, go after the old age homes, delete their entire gene pool. And then this person says, well, maybe Hitler should have finished the job and killed all you guys. Now I understand why he did it. When I look at this, it's like, how the hell are we ever going to break this cycle of endless violence? How the hell are we ever going to get some sort of reasonable peace deal? How is it going to happen? You look at this and you go, oh my God, everybody's lost their goddamn minds. Because your call for genocide is so wrong that now I'm calling for genocide to counter that. It's like, I want genocide. No, I want genocide. No, I want genocide. Have you considered non-genocide? Have you considered that? Have you considered dialogue and reason and independent arbiters to get involved to parse through all the specifics? I mean, look, the two options on the table, we've talked about this before. Cenk actually brought this up the other day on the Young Turks. I thought it was interesting. He brought up the example of Cyprus. Turkey illegally occupied Cyprus, which is a Greek island. And what happened? At some point, there were attacks and everything, and they decided, all right, the Greeks go on that side of the island, the Turkish stay here on this side of the island, we're going to build a giant wall and be done with it. And they literally split it in half and said, you guys get that side, we get this side. And they did that. And guess what? Ever since then, there hasn't been much violence, right? There hasn't been much violence. So that that might sound like a dirty solution and, a weird solution, but hasn't been any violence. So that's one of the options here for Israel-Palestine. 1967 borders, build the biggest walls in the world and have UN peacekeepers involved and bigger nations involved to effectively keep the peace and let people flourish from there. That's one answer. And the other answer, of course, is one state solution, democratic rights for all, human rights for all, political rights for all. One state. But you look at this and you think, we are so much closer to just a genocide competition than we are to that. And it's truly, truly disheartening. So look, I can go on all day. I've seen insane responses from all over the map. But cooler heads need to prevail, or this is going to get a hell of a lot worse. And we all know that, but we feel so helpless to changing the trajectory of what's going on. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.